The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, laughter, and the faint smell of roses carried by the heavy floral arrangements. My sister had planned this wedding down to the last embroidered napkin, and it showed. Everything screamed perfection, at least on the surface. I had prepared myself to smile politely, clap when required, and fade into the background. But she didn't want me invisible. Not really. She wanted me displayed. I should have recognized it in her eyes the moment she spotted me across the room, her smile too tight, too triumphant. She grabbed her new husband's arm like a trophy she needed to show off, but her eyes were on me. Always on me. It wasn't the first time she tried to make me feel small. She'd been doing it since childhood, snide remarks hidden behind sugary tones, comparisons delivered like daggers wrapped in ribbon. But this time, the audience wasn't family. It was her co-workers, her boss, her in-laws. People whose respect she wanted more than anything. And to her, my humiliation was the perfect entertainment. She led me through the crowd with that smirk, stopping in front of a tall man with a presence so commanding it made the room seem to bend toward him. His tailored suit looked effortless, but it wasn't just the clothes. It was the way he carried himself, calm, sharp, every gesture measured. My sister lit up in his presence, her voice higher, brighter. "Boss," she said with the faux affection she always used in professional circles, "this is my sister. The unemployed wife who can't keep up." The words dropped like shards of glass, glittering, cutting. A few people chuckled. Some avoided eye contact, sipping their champagne. My hands tightened around the clutch I held, knuckles whitening. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, but I forced myself to remain still. Silence had been my armor for years. It had protected me through countless little humiliations. But before I could even draw a breath, he looked at me. Not with pity. Not with judgment. Just a brief, knowing smile. Then he turned back to her. "If anyone's losing their job today," he said in a voice low but sharp enough to slice through the air, "it's you." The laughter died instantly. Her smile faltered, her hands stiffening on her champagne flute. I felt the shock ripple through the group like an invisible wave. Whispers rose, quick and darting. And in that single moment, the balance of power shifted. I didn't know him. I didn't know what he saw in me, or why he said those words. But the look he gave me before walking away, measured, deliberate, planted something I couldn't shake. For the rest of the night, my sister avoided me. Her smiles turned brittle, her conversations forced. She laughed too loudly, gestured too wildly, trying to regain control of the narrative. But her boss's words lingered in the air like smoke no one could wave away. And me? I felt a strange mixture of vindication and dread. Vindication, because someone finally saw through her facade. Dread, because I knew my sister. She wouldn't let this go. Later, when the music had dulled and the guests were thinning out, I stepped outside onto the terrace for air. The city light stretched beyond the glass railing, blinking against the night. My shoes pinched, my head throbbed, and all I wanted was quiet. That's when I heard his voice again. "You didn't defend yourself." I turned. He was there, leaning against the railing, a glass of something amber in his hand. His eyes studied me, not with curiosity but with precision, like he was trying to solve a puzzle. "I didn't need to," I said finally. His brow lifted slightly. "Most people would have tried." "Most people waste their breath," I replied, surprising myself with the sharpness in my tone. That earned me the faintest curve of his mouth, a ghost of amusement. "She's ambitious," he said after a pause. "But ambition without discipline is reckless. I've seen it before. It burns out quickly." "You don't know her," I said, though the words felt weak even as I spoke them. "I know enough," he countered, then studied me more closely. "And I think I know you too. More than you think." His words unsettled me. I wasn't used to being seen, not really. People usually looked past me, through me, dismissing me as someone insignificant. But he looked at me like I mattered. And that terrified me. Over the following weeks, I tried to put the moment behind me. Life returned to its routine: bills, chores, the quiet monotony of days bleeding into each other. My husband worked long hours. I tried to fill my time with books, small projects, anything that could silence the growing restlessness inside me. But then the call came. It was his assistant, polite and precise. She said he wanted to meet. Not at his office, but at a quiet cafe tucked into a corner of the city. I almost didn't go. I told myself it was absurd. What could a man like him possibly want with me? And yet, curiosity pulled me there. He was already seated when I arrived, sipping coffee like he had all the time in the world. When he saw me, he gestured to the chair across from him. "You showed up," he said. "I almost didn't." "But you did." His tone suggested he had expected nothing less. I sat, the unease swirling in my stomach. "Why am I here?" "Because you're wasted where you are," he said bluntly. "And I don't believe in waste." The word startled me. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," he repeated, just like he had that night on the terrace. "I know you've been underestimated. I know you've learned how to observe without speaking, how to adapt without drawing attention. That's a skill most people overlook. But I don't." His eyes locked onto mine, unflinching. "And I know you can be useful to me." The air between us thickened, charged. I wanted to laugh, to dismiss his words as flattery, manipulation. But deep down, something in me stirred. A whisper I had buried long ago, the hunger to prove myself, to be more than just the shadow in someone else's spotlight. "What if you're wrong about me?" I asked quietly. "Then I'll be disappointed," he said, leaning back. "But I don't think I am." That conversation marked the beginning. The first step into a world I never imagined I'd enter. But it also marked the start of the unraveling of my sister's mask, of my marriage, of everything I thought was stable. Because stepping into his world meant stepping out of the role I had been assigned all my life. It meant challenging the very balance of power my sister had built for herself. And though I didn't know it yet, it meant war. The cafe meeting stayed with me long after I walked away. His words had settled deep into the cracks of my mind, echoing in places I didn't want to explore. "You're wasted where you are." It was flattering, unsettling, terrifying all at once. I told myself to forget it. To file it away as a strange encounter and move on. But the universe had other plans. A week later, a sleek black envelope arrived at my door. Inside was a formal invitation, an industry gala hosted by his firm, one of the biggest corporate empires in the city. My name was on the list. Just my name. Not my husband's. I almost tore it in half. What business did I have at a place like that? I had no career to boast of, no title, nothing to anchor myself with. And yet, something stronger than fear whispered, "Go." So I did. The gala was a cathedral of wealth and ambition. Glass walls soared high above, chandeliers sparkled like constellations, and the air buzzed with laughter polished to perfection. Men in tailored suits and women in gowns that shimmered with subtle power filled the room. Deals were being made in every handshake, alliances forged with every toast. And there I was, an outsider, a shadow in borrowed heels. But he found me within minutes. As if he had been waiting. "You came," he said, that faint curve of his lips betraying satisfaction. "I shouldn't have," I admitted. "Maybe. But you did." His eyes scanned the room before returning to me. "Stay close. Listen. Watch. That's all you need to do tonight." It wasn't a request. It was an instruction. So I followed his lead, hovering near as he navigated conversations with the ease of someone who owned the floor. I didn't speak much, but I really watched. The way people angled their bodies when they lied. The forced laughter hiding contempt. The way alliances shifted like sand with every whispered promise. He was right. Observation was my strength. And tonight, it felt like a weapon. Halfway through the evening, I heard a familiar laugh. Too sharp, too rehearsed. My sister. She swept into the room in a crimson gown, her new husband trailing behind like an accessory. Her eyes landed on me almost instantly. For a heartbeat, shock flickered across her face. Then came the smirk. "Well," she purred as she approached, "look who found her way in. Did you sneak past security, or?" "Don't," he cut her off, his tone calm but edged with steel. "She's here as my guest." The color drained slightly from her cheeks, but she recovered quickly, plastering on a brittle smile. "Of course. I just didn't realize you knew her." "I know potential when I see it," he said simply. Then, as if she weren't even worth more words, he turned and guided me toward another circle of power players. The look on her face burned into me. Rage, disbelief, fear all tangled together. For once, she wasn't the center. And she hated it. Over the next hour, I became invisible and indispensable all at once. While people dismissed me as decoration, I absorbed everything. Names, grudges, whispered deals. I noticed a senior executive pocketing favors he shouldn't have. A partner speaking out of both sides of his mouth. By the time the night ended, I carried a mosaic of information no one else had pieced together. Outside, under the cool night air, he finally asked, "What did you see?" I hesitated, then repeated everything I'd observed: the inconsistencies, the cracks, the hidden tensions. His expression didn't change, but his silence deepened as I spoke, like he was cataloging every word. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. "You have instincts most people spend years trying to develop. You're wasted as an ornament." The word stung. Ornament. It was what I had allowed myself to become. "I don't have experience," I said quietly. "You have something rarer," he countered. "Clarity. Discipline. And you're not blinded by your own ego. That makes you dangerous in the right role." I shook my head. "Why me?" "Because," he said, his gaze unflinching, "I don't recruit people. I find weapons. And you're a blade waiting to be unsheathed." The days that followed blurred into a strange rhythm. He called me to his office not as an employee, but as an observer. He let me sit quietly in meetings, listening, watching. At first, I felt like an imposter. But then I noticed what others missed: the way two directors exchanged subtle looks that betrayed hidden alliances, the hesitation in a financial officer's voice when numbers didn't add up. Every time, he asked me what I saw. And every time, I told him. My answers grew sharper, bolder. And he listened. Really listened. It was intoxicating. For the first time in years, I felt seen. But not everyone welcomed my presence. One afternoon, as I left his office, I nearly collided with her. "My sister." "What the hell are you doing here?" she hissed, her voice low but venomous. I straightened, meeting her glare. "Learning." She laughed bitterly. "Learning? You don't belong in this world. You never have. You'll embarrass yourself, and him, and me. Just stay out of it." Her words should have cut me down. Once, they would have. But now, I only felt a calm I couldn't explain. "I guess we'll see," I said quietly, brushing past her. Her nails dug into her clutch as she watched me go. Weeks turned into months. I learned faster than even I thought possible. Strategy sessions, negotiation tactics, the subtle theater of boardroom battles. I wasn't just surviving in that world, I was beginning to thrive. But with every step forward I took, my sister unraveled. Her mask slipped. Her desperation showed. She whispered poison into ears, tried to paint me as incompetent, a distraction, a liability. And then one evening, I overheard something I wasn't supposed to. She was in the hallway outside his office, her voice sharp, almost pleading. "You don't understand, she doesn't belong here. She's not one of us. She'll ruin everything." There was a pause. Then his voice, calm, unyielding, "She already sees more than you ever will." The silence that followed was deafening. That was the night I realized this wasn't just about me proving myself. It was about survival. Because my sister wasn't just envious, she was threatened. And threatened people are dangerous. The breaking point came during a critical presentation to the board. He had asked me to sit in, not to speak, just to watch. But when a senior executive manipulated numbers to cover his tracks, I saw it instantly. My heart pounded, my palms damp. Speaking up would mean breaking the unspoken rule of my silence. But something in me snapped. That projection is false, I said suddenly, my voice slicing through the room. All eyes turned to me. My throat tightened, but I pressed on. If you compare it against the quarterly data from 2 months ago, the numbers don't align. He's masking a shortfall. The room froze. The executive's face blanched. Murmurs rippled. He didn't interrupt me. He didn't save me. He simply watched. Finally, one of the directors demanded the files. Within minutes, the lie unraveled. The executive's scheme crumbled in front of everyone. And for the first time, I felt the room shift not away from me, but toward me. When the meeting ended, he approached me, his voice low. That was bold. I couldn't stay silent, I admitted. Good, he said simply. Then, with a faint smile, I don't need ornaments. I need allies. But victory came with a cost. That night, I received a message from my sister. No greetings, no pleasantries. Just one line. You don't know what you've started. I stared at the words, my chest tightening. She was right. Because I wasn't just stepping into his world anymore. I was stepping into a war. The warning message from my sister lingered in my phone like a dark seed. You don't know what you've started. At first, I brushed it off. She was jealous, yes, but she'd always been that way. What more could she do beyond snide remarks and backhanded insults? But deep down, I knew better. My sister wasn't just petty. She was ambitious. And ambition, when cornered, is dangerous. I learned how dangerous 2 weeks later. The boardroom had become a second home to me. I no longer sat silent in the corner, I spoke when needed, sharp and precise. Not often, but enough. Enough for people to notice. Enough for whispers to start. Who is she? She doesn't even have a title. Why does he let her in here? At first, I thought the murmurs were harmless. But then I noticed files missing from my desk. Notes I had taken during meetings vanished, only to reappear days later in the hands of others. Rumors surfaced, small but corrosive, suggesting I was overstepping, that I was distracting him, that I was a liability. It didn't take long to trace the poison back to her. One evening, I overheard 2 junior analysts whispering in the hallway. She said the boss is only keeping her around because, well, you know. That's what everyone's saying. The words burned hotter than any insult she had thrown at me before. She wasn't just undermining my work, she was attacking my integrity. My presence in his world was being rewritten as scandal, weakness, impropriety. And in a world built on perception, that was lethal. I confronted him in his office late that night. She's destroying me from the inside out, I said, my voice tighter than I wanted it to be. He leaned back in his chair, unshaken. Good. I blinked. Good. If she's attacking, it means you're becoming a threat. Threats don't waste energy on irrelevance. The words landed heavy, but they didn't ease the knot in my chest. But she's winning. People believe her. Then prove them wrong, he said simply. Not with words. With results. This world doesn't care about gossip, it cares about power. Earn it, and the noise dies. His calmness infuriated me, but deep down, I knew he was right. Still, knowing didn't make it easier. The sabotage escalated. Documents tampered with. Meetings rescheduled without my knowledge. She even tried to set me up with an error in a report, an error that would have embarrassed me in front of the entire board. But I caught it. And when I quietly corrected the mistake before the presentation, I saw the flicker of frustration in her eyes. She wasn't used to me fighting back. That only made her more dangerous. The breaking point came during the quarterly review. I had been working for weeks on a proposal streamlining operations in a way that could save millions. It was bold, disruptive, but backed by data. I had rehearsed my words, steeled myself for the moment. But when the meeting began, my sister spoke first. And she presented my proposal as her own. The room buzzed with approval as she laid out the details, my numbers, my vision. I sat frozen, my nails digging into my palms, bile rising in my throat. She didn't even glance at me. When she finished, the board applauded. And he looked at me. Just once, sharply, deliberately. I understood. This was my test. When the chairman asked for feedback, I stood. My legs trembled, but my voice did not. With respect, I began, my eyes fixed on her. What you've just heard isn't her work. It's mine. Gasps rippled. My sister's smile faltered. I drafted that proposal. I built those numbers. She stole them. I turned to the board. And if you look closely, you'll see she doesn't even understand them because the version she presented is incomplete. The room fell silent. One of the directors frowned. Is that true? I walked forward, my heart pounding, and placed my binder on the table. This is the original. With projections she left out. My sister's face drained of color as the truth unraveled. The directors murmured, paging through my work. The chairman's expression hardened. And then, for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. The aftermath was chaos. She tried to twist it, to frame it as a miscommunication, but the damage was done. The board saw her for what she was, a thief of ideas, desperate and reckless. But instead of relief, I felt hollow. Because I knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something far darker. That night, she cornered me in the parking garage, her heels clicking like gunshots against the concrete. You think you've won? She spat, her eyes wild. You've humiliated me. In front of everyone. Do you have any idea what you've done? Yes, I said quietly. I stopped you. Her face twisted. You don't belong here. You never will. I'll make sure of it. There was no mask now. No fake sweetness. Just raw hatred. For the first time, I wasn't afraid. I already do, I said, stepping past her. She didn't follow. But I felt her eyes burning into my back. The next few weeks were a blur. Her influence began to fracture. Whispers spread not about me, but about her. Her credibility wavered, her alliances thinned. I thought maybe, just maybe, the storm was passing. Until the night the scandal broke. It hit the news like wildfire, leaked emails exposing corruption inside the company. Misuse of funds. Backroom deals. Names splashed across headlines, hers among them. She denied it, of course. Screamed about conspiracies, sabotage. But the evidence was damning. And in the middle of the chaos, suspicion turned toward me. You leaked this, she accused, cornering me in the hallway with eyes blazing. You set me up. I didn't, I said firmly. But even as I spoke, I realized the truth didn't matter. Because whether I leaked it or not, the tide had shifted. And she was drowning. He called me into his office that evening, the city lights blazing behind him. She's finished, he said simply. I sank into the chair across from him, the weight of it all pressing down. I didn't want this. Didn't you? His eyes pierced me. You wanted to be seen. To be valued. To have power. This is what it costs. I shook my head. She's still my sister. She was your rival the moment she chose to humiliate you, he countered. Family doesn't excuse betrayal. You've seen that now. His words chilled me. Because deep down, I knew he was right. But another truth burned just as strong. If I could destroy her, then she could destroy me. And the war between us was far from over. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment. The wedding. The cafe. The boardroom. The parking garage. I had entered this world by accident. But now, I was trapped in it. And there was no way back. Only forward. Into the fire. The scandal had cracked the company wide open. Executives whispered in corners, alliances dissolved overnight, and fear hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Names were dragged into headlines, careers ended with a single press release, and reputations that had taken decades to build collapsed in days. And through it all, my sister flailed. She denied everything, shouted at anyone who would listen, blamed conspiracies, even hinted that I had orchestrated the whole thing. But her words carried no weight anymore. She was no longer the golden protégé. She was toxic, radioactive. People avoided her like stepping around a live wire. For the first time in my life, I wasn't standing in her shadow. I was standing in her place. At first, I didn't want it. The attention, the suspicion, the sudden weight of expectation. My name was whispered now, too not as scandal, but as speculation. Who is she, really? Why does he trust her? Could she actually lead? The questions unsettled me. I had never seen myself as a leader. I wasn't trained, wasn't groomed, didn't have the pedigree or the glossy resume. But every time doubt clawed at me, I remembered his words, prove them wrong. Not with words. With results. So I did. My first real chance came during the chaos of restructuring. With half the board distracted by damage control, smaller fires burned unattended. I stepped in not because I was asked, but because I saw the cracks no one else noticed. When a supply chain bottleneck threatened to cost millions, I mapped an alternative route through overlooked vendors, slashing delays by weeks. When internal communication broke down, I drafted a streamlined system that cut red tape without cutting accountability. None of it was glamorous. None of it made headlines. But slowly, steadily, results piled up. And people noticed. At first, it was just nods of acknowledgement in hallways, quiet thanks from overworked managers. But soon, directors began calling me into their offices not as an observer, but as a voice. "What do you think?" they'd ask, sliding reports across their desks. And I told them. Honestly. Directly. Without the spin they were used to. It was risky. But it worked. Because in a world drowning in politics, my clarity became a currency. Of course, not everyone welcomed my rise. Whispers shifted from curiosity to resentment. Some said I was his puppet. Others said I was ambitious, manipulative, dangerous. A few tried to test me, undermining my work, questioning my authority, even confronting me in meetings with veiled insults. I learned quickly that silence could no longer be my armor. Silence had protected me once, but now, silence would kill me. So I spoke. Calmly. Sharply. With facts no one could refute. And every time I did, I saw it shift. The grudging respect in their eyes. But my sister didn't fade quietly. If anything, the more she lost, the more reckless she became. She stormed into offices uninvited, accused me publicly of scheming against her, spread rumors that bordered on slander. One afternoon, she barged into the conference room mid-meeting, her voice shrill, her face flushed. "She's a fraud," she screamed, pointing at me with trembling hands. "You think she's helping you, but she's destroying this company from the inside. Can't you see it?" The room went silent. Dozens of eyes turned to me. My heart thundered, but my voice stayed steady. "If that were true," I said evenly, "then why am I the one fixing the problems you created?" A murmur swept the room. Her face crumpled with rage. And in that moment, I realized something profound. I wasn't fighting to survive anymore. I was fighting to lead. That night, he called me into his office. The skyline stretched behind him, the city glowing like a circuit board. "You handled her well," he said. "I didn't want to," I admitted. She's still my sister. She chose this war, not you, he said firmly. And now, she's finished. It's time you stopped thinking like her shadow and started thinking like her replacement. The word caught me off guard. Replacement. I'm not her, I said quietly. No, he agreed. You're better. From then on, everything accelerated. He began giving me more responsibility, not just observing, but steering. Negotiating contracts. Leading small teams. Representing him in meetings he couldn't attend. At first, the weight felt crushing. But each time I carried it, I grew stronger. And each success silenced more doubters. By the end of that quarter, whispers in the hall had changed again. She's not going anywhere. She might actually be the future. But the higher I climbed, the lonelier it became. Friends drifted, unsure how to relate to me anymore. My husband, once supportive, grew distant, uncomfortable with the intensity of my new world. Dinners turned into silence, conversations into arguments. You're never home, he said one night, frustration sharp in his voice. I'm trying to build something, I replied. At what cost? He demanded. I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. Meanwhile, my sister's desperation reached a breaking point. When all else failed, she tried one last weapon, pity. She showed up at my apartment late one night, mascara smudged, tears streaking her face. Please, she begged, clutching my arm. Help me. I'm losing everything. I can't survive this without you. For a moment, the sister I remembered, the one before ambition, before cruelty, flashed before me. Vulnerable. Human. But then I remembered the wedding. The humiliation. The sabotage. The stolen proposal. And I remembered the message, you don't know what you've started. She had chosen this war. And I couldn't save her from herself. I'm sorry, I said softly, pulling away. But I won't go back to being your shadow. Her sobs echoed in the hallway as I closed the door. The next morning, the news broke, she had resigned. Or rather, she had been forced out. Her name disappeared from company rosters, her office emptied overnight. Just like that, she was gone, swallowed by the same ambition that once fueled her. And in her absence, a vacuum opened. A vacuum that needed to be filled. He called me into his office again, his expression unreadable. The board wants stability, he said. They want someone who can be trusted. Someone who can lead without games, without politics. I swallowed hard. And you think that's me? I know it is, he said simply. Silence stretched between us, heavy and electric. This was it. The moment everything had been building toward. The moment I stopped being an observer, an ornament, even a rival. The moment I became a leader. That night, as I stood at the window of my apartment, staring out at the city lights, I thought of everything it had taken to get here. The humiliation. The betrayal. The war. And I realized something I had never admitted before, I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was rising. And I wasn't going to stop. The office smelled different without her. It wasn't a scent you could bottle or define. It was the absence of chaos, the silence after a storm. For years, she had been everywhere, her perfume lingering in hallways, her laughter slicing through meetings, her shadow stretching over me like a net. Now, there was nothing. The air felt lighter. And yet, the absence unsettled me. Because when someone like her disappears, they don't truly vanish. They plot. They wait. They scheme in the dark. But for now, the stage was mine. The board's decision came faster than I expected. In a closed-door session, they named me interim lead, a title that felt both surreal and inevitable. Stability, they said. Trust. I wore the title like armor, even though inside, doubt still gnawed. But I refused to show it. Because in this world, weakness is blood in the water. So I straightened my shoulders, lifted my chin, and stepped into the fire. My first test came immediately. The company's biggest client, a multinational worth billions, was threatening to pull their contracts in the wake of scandal. Without them, everything would collapse. The board panicked. Advisors whispered about delays, compromises, desperate concessions. I said no. No delays. No concessions. I'll handle it. They stared at me as though I'd lost my mind. But I walked into that meeting room alone, faced a dozen executives whose eyes were sharp as knives, and told them the truth. Yes, we had failures. Yes, mistakes were made. But under my watch, they will not happen again. If you want guarantees, I'll put my name on the line. Not excuses. Not paperwork. My name. The room went silent. And then, one of them leaned back, a slow smile spreading across his face. Finally, he said, someone willing to take responsibility. The contract stayed. And so did I. Victory tasted sharp, like metal. For weeks, I lived on adrenaline, negotiating, restructuring, rebuilding. Every day was a battlefield, every decision a risk. But with each win, my confidence hardened. The girl who once sat in silence at the wedding table, humiliated and ignored, was gone. In her place stood someone else. Someone no one saw coming. And yet, success came at a cost. My marriage cracked further. "You've changed," he said one night, his voice hollow. "I had to," I replied. "No," he whispered. "You chose to." I didn't argue. Because maybe he was right. I had chosen. I had chosen power, survival, redemption. And in choosing, I had lost something I could never get back. But I couldn't stop now. Not when I was so close. Then she returned. Of course she did. Not in the company, not in the halls I now ruled, but in whispers, in rumors, in carefully leaked stories designed to tarnish me. She's inexperienced. She's reckless. She's just a stand-in until someone better comes along. At first, I ignored them. But then came something sharp, an anonymous leak of internal documents, twisted to make me look incompetent, corrupt. I knew it was her. It had her fingerprints all over it. For a moment, old fear returned, the fear of being crushed under her shadow again. But then, I remembered everything. The humiliation. The sabotage. The warning, "You don't know what you've started." And I realized something. She was right. I didn't know what I had started. But now I did. And I wasn't going to let her win. I fought fire with fire. Not lies, not games, truth. I called a press conference. I laid out the facts, transparent and unflinching. Yes, mistakes were made. Yes, the company had faltered. But I stood there and owned it. Reporters grilled me, cameras flashed, headlines spun. And when it was over, when the smoke cleared, one thing was undeniable: I hadn't hidden. I hadn't run. I had faced it head on. The board, the employees, even the clients saw it. And trust, fragile, rare, priceless, settled in my favor. She couldn't touch me anymore. But she tried one last time. Late one evening, as I left the office, she was waiting by my car. The streetlight caught her face, hollow, desperate, almost unrecognizable. "You think you've won?" she hissed. "You think they'll follow you forever? They'll turn on you, just like they turned on me. You'll see." I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't see my sister. I saw a warning. What ambition without balance, power without restraint, really looked like. And I knew, in that moment, that my redemption wasn't just about rising. It was about rising without becoming her. "I don't need them to follow me forever," I said quietly. "Just long enough to prove that I can lead without destroying everything in my path." Her eyes narrowed, hatred burning. But she said nothing. She just turned and walked away. And this time, I didn't look back. The months that followed cemented everything. The company stabilized. Profits rose. New ventures launched. Slowly, the scars of scandal began to heal. And me? I wasn't just interim anymore. I was permanent. The board voted unanimously. For the first time, my name wasn't whispered with doubt, it was spoken with respect. I had stepped out of the shadows, out of humiliation, out of betrayal. And I had risen. But here's the truth they don't tell you about power: it never really redeems you. It doesn't heal the wounds or erase the past. It just gives you the chance to write a different ending. And that's what I did. Not for her. Not even for him. For me. Because the girl they humiliated at the wedding table, the one they forced to serve, the one they laughed at, she was gone. And in her place stood a woman no one would ever forget. Years later, I still remember the look on their faces, the frozen smiles, the shock when the truth came out, when power shifted, when tables turned. I don't remember the humiliation anymore. I remember the moment everything changed. The moment I stopped being invisible. The moment I became unstoppable. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: redemption isn't given. It's taken. And once you take it, no one, not even your own blood, can steal it back.